Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unacademy, the one stop destination for the civil services English medium aspirants. Welcome to the daily Hindu analysis. If I'm clearly audible and visible to you, please let me know in the live chat box and allow me to resume this session. Please write yes. Clearly audible and visible, please write yes in the live chat so that I know there is no glitch. Wonderful. All looks good. Let's start with the session. In case you're starting out your preparation and you need any kind of guidance or help and you want to make us a part of your preparation, you can use the offer in which we are providing Unacademy subscriptions at one of the lowest prices of 16,999. We have been told that these offers are only valid till about the 28th of March. So please make good use of this. All you need to do is to use the code IAS English. Please also check that there are various extending validity related offers as well. For example, if you take a 15 months offer, you get 3 months extension free of cost at a very lucrative price. Make use of these offers by checking the description box below. These will be the topics that we'll be covering in today's edition. Let's dive into the first topic directly. Should men get paternity leave in India? Now, why is this topic important? This is important from two perspectives, one GS paper 1 and two GS paper 2, right? GS paper 1 social issues and GS paper 2 the schemes for vulnerable sections. That means if we provide some form of paternity benefits, will it also help women enter the workforce? This kind of a discussion can be the focus area as well. Now, we will dive a little more than this particular article, since this is in the form of a conversation between two individuals. It could significantly miss out details, but we are not going to do that. Let's dive into two set of arguments. The one set of argument is that why is it important? Why is it significant? Why do we need paternity leaves in the first place? So, one side of the arguments, we are going to talk about the importance and significance of paternity leave. Maternity leave is already guaranteed in India with the Maternity Benefit Act that you would be knowing of. But paternity leave is not the norm. In fact, some government servants get paternity leave for about 15 days or so. But it is not the general norm. So one side of the arguments, we will prepare the importance and significance. And on the other side of the arguments, we must also prepare the concerns and issues associated with such kind of a leave that we are discussing. The first and foremost importance of why this should be the case is that it will help in the recovery time required for mothers just after delivery or post delivery. Yes, this is a very important time. It is strenuous both physically, mentally, and emotionally for the mother. And therefore, about 2 weeks or 3 weeks of the father staying back at home can provide the much needed buffer required for the mother to understand, to get used to child rearing responsibilities. So, first things first, yes, it will be important because it will support or it will aid what? The mother's recovery at that time. And that is also very, very important. The father can be there to provide in the buffer required for the same. The second important idea is that it will break certain socio-cultural norms in India and even in most society that are patriarchal in nature. It is almost unsaid and taken for granted that domestic work, caregiving responsibility to the child, and household chores are the responsibility of a woman, right? So, therefore, this caregiving burden that was automatically unsaid will be questioned the moment we legalize and we give paternity leaves. So, yes, it will be important in challenging or changing, we can say, certain regressive socio-cultural stereotypes. Both stereotypes as well as expectations. What are expectations? That it is the job of the woman to stay at home and take care of the child, and it is the job of the husband to provide for money or be the bread earner for the family. So it will challenge these socio-cultural stereotypes and will enhance the idea of shared parenting. Very, very important in that context. Please also note that various studies, even psychologists, have testified to the fact that whenever a child, especially in the formative years, in the early years, where huge amount of growth, personality development happens, if the child witnesses both the parents together, that means not just rearing up from the mother's side, but also emotional aid from the father's side. Such children are suited to develop much better, confident, and emotionally available personalities as compared to children that are predominantly raised by only one parent. So, therefore, it is important even for the personality development, a holistic personality development of the child in the formative years. Please understand the early years. Why? Because this will be strengthened by the father and child bond. So that is why it is also important to enhance paternity leaves. It is also very important to enhance paternity leaves is because of the double burden. Please understand. What do you mean by double burden? Various times used surveys as well as other reports have mentioned that women in India, they do 10 times more household related work as compared to men. And a huge amount of this is going into care responsibilities, care for the elderly, care for the children, etc. So, therefore, this creates a problem of double burden. Double burden for whom? For a woman who is maybe a middle class working woman. She has the work burden, that means her professional responsibilities, and she also has the domestic burden, that means the child rearing responsibilities. This creates a lot of instances where women feel the burnout in order to balance these, where women feel the issues associated with anxiety. In fact, various health studies have also pointed out the rising cases of postpartum depression. This is also very, very common and increasing. Why? Because the mental health of the women are taking a major toll due to this excess double burden. This double burden, or women being burdened with two responsibilities, is not just impacting households, etc. Rather, it is also impacting the fertility trends. If predominantly the job of rearing a child falls on a woman, she takes these leaves. Because she takes these leaves, or she is feeling the pressure of this versus that, home versus work, she often leaves the workforce. And therefore, we see that lack of shared parenting is one of the reasons why women in India are lower in terms of participation in the workforce. So this is also very significant, paternity leave, to reduce the double burden faced by women. If this is reduced, there can be a possibility with support to increase the labor force participation rate of females. And if the labor force participation rate of females increases, this will give a push to India's GDP. In fact, there are various studies of even the World Bank that says India is losing a certain percentage of its GDP because females in India are not participating fully. So we'll be able to leverage this GDP that we are losing at this time. In other words, we will be able to fully utilize our demographic dividend. This is also a connect that you can make. An important connect that you can also make is that these kind of burdens, in case paternity leave is not there, and only the mother, for example, in nuclear families, in families where both the individuals are working, dual income households, a lot of times this kind of an analysis that what it would be after having a child, the amount of pressure, the amount of work, etc., this is forcing various nuclear family couples or dual income households to reduce their decision when it comes to children. And that is why it is also impacting the fertility of certain developed regions. Right? So, therefore, in order to, paternity leave can ensure the maintenance of adequate fertility. What is adequate fertility? Maintenance of adequate fertility means having the number of children that are 2. 2.1 is replacement level fertility rate. Replacement level fertility rate is considered ideal. Why? Because at this place or at this fertility level, the population is neither increasing nor decreasing. The previous two people, the mother and father, are being replaced by two other individuals, that is the children. A very, very popular saying that you would see behind a lot of trucks and vehicles in India as well. When it comes to population control campaigns, hum do, hamare do, right? So that also becomes a case, and we are seeing that this fertility or total fertility rate in a lot of urban areas, developed areas, is dipping. That means families are choosing to have one child and not two. Why? Because of the lack of dual shared support, etc. So that becomes the case in point. Another case in point is the Supreme Court had recently discussed the idea that this should be the case. This also creates another important or how this can be implemented is that right now only Government of India servants get about 15 days of paternity leave. It is very difficult to enforce this in private sector organizations. But the author says we can take certain best practices, and you can quote this in your answers as well. Certain best practices, for example, in the country such as Sweden, you can quote this whenever you are writing the answer as best practice. Whenever in Sweden, there is a parental leave, not a paternity leave, maternity leave separately, but a parental leave. That means you together as a couple take a leave. You have been given a certain buffer. In that, according to your flexibility, the mother can take or the father can take, and that can be your understanding. In Sweden, it is as high as 480 days. Please note. And this is the idea of parental leave, not paternity. Paternity means fathers. Parental means a combination of mother and father. So that becomes a case in point. Now let's understand, because we have understood why it is important, the significance. Let's understand the issues involved in it. If we were to implement it, what will be the concerns associated with it, right? The first and foremost issue involved in it is how do you resist, or there will be resistance due to the socio-cultural barriers. For example, families themselves might not believe that it is for the man to stay back at home. You would have heard very, very popularly in families saying, what is his need? Why is he required? So yes, there might be resistance when it comes to socio-cultural barriers, a certain mindset, a certain stereotype that is already in place. Another issue when it comes to implementation of this is that a very minuscule amount of India's workforce is in the organized sector. Organized sectors are those, or formal sectors are those, where these kind of rights can be enforced. It can be legally mandated for these companies who are in the formal sector to provide these leaves. But the predominance, one of the concern is going to be the predominance of the labor force or workforce engaged in informal sectors. And here, the implementation will be lax, it will be a very, very big challenge, and the implementation is almost impossible. In fact, the data quoted in the conversation is that only 10% of India's workforce is in the formal working channels. And therefore, the effectiveness, even if we bring about a paternity leave, the effectiveness of that paternity leave is going to be severely limited. That is something that you will write in your concerns and issues as well. Another concern and issue is going to be about the perspective of the workforce or the employer. So, the employer, as in India, you would have seen that maternity leave is also why multiple employers, companies, etc., have been discriminated when it comes to hiring women. There is hiring discrimination. Why? Because they feel that why ensure whenever we have a project going on, why allow an employee to take a break? Why give them any kind of paid leave and take the hit when it comes to the costs for us? So, from the employer's perspective or from the workplace perspective, this could raise concerns about the productivity loss. That means if you are in a project and suddenly you take a leave, this could also increase the costs from the employer's perspective. Why? Because the costs associated with paid leaves, and therefore they might be reluctant with this as well. So, financial costs, etc. There can also be concerns. Please understand, there can also be concerns associated with misuse of leave. You've given the leave for child rearing responsibilities, but anything but child rearing responsibilities are happening, and this can almost be taken as a vacation on the pretext of paternity leave. So, there can be a misuse of leave as well, and that is another issue and cost associated with it. And another cost associated with it is that it can create such backlash. It can create major backlash from the private sector, because they might find these kind of social welfare leaves as having a very adverse impact on their competitiveness. They might feel that the labor is becoming very, very expensive, or the cost per labor is also increasing. That can be a case as well. And therefore, one of the biggest concerns is that if our socio-cultural, so many times what happens is that if social welfare expenditure, if the government mandates, so this is government mandated, if the government will bring about a law, for example, the Maternity Benefit Act, if the government mandates certain social welfare expenditure, for example, paternity leave, maternity leave, etc., and it is forced on the private sector, so many times the private sector or companies will deliberately prefer informal sector to continue. So that is also a major issue, that this kind of pressure or mandated obligations by the government on social welfare can perpetuate and even push the decisions for companies, for employers to continue an informal relationship, contract based relationship, gig worker based relationship, etc. Right? So these are the concerns and issues that you would be pointing out. You can attempt a question, a practice question according to this topic, and that can be the idea of paternity leave can be significant for gender empowerment. Critically analyze or discuss. Let's go to the next article. The key to India's multi domain deterrence capabilities. Now, let's understand what this article first is talking about. Now, this article firstly mentions issues associated with GS paper 3, internal security, or how the security apparatus should be maintained when it comes to India's preparedness. Right? Let's understand what the article is talking about. First and foremost, the article definitely recognizes the predominant threat faced by India from an aggressive neighbor, showcasing aggressive tendencies. For example, multiple clashes that have happened earlier, the Galwan standoff, the Doklam issue, etc. So, therefore, the threat, the imminent threat for India has been an aggressive neighbor, that is China. China's tactics are well known not just in India's backyard but also in other areas. Yes, we've had some Galwan standoff. We've also had issues associated with Doklam. We are bordering and maintaining certain troops in the Ladakh region. These issues, yes, continue. But China is also displaying certain aggressive tactics or violating certain territorial integrity using the idea of nine dash line in the South China Sea. So, looking at this is not important, looking at these aggressive tendencies of a neighbor right on India's border, India, according to the author, must be prepared at all times. The preparedness should be maintained at all times. What kind of preparedness? Preparedness in order to face and match a military challenge at any time from this neighbor. That should be our deterrence. Deterrence means have your capabilities developed, have your ammunition developed to such a way that the enemy or the other party, they think twice before taking the first strike against you. For example, that is what we also call as nuclear deterrence. The moment one country is fighting another country and they both have nuclear weapons, there is always a conservative approach that these countries will take. Why? Because the country that is taking the first strike will always know that they have the ammunition ready that can completely destroy us in seconds. So, deterrence means creating a fear in the other by enhancing your capabilities and therefore making the other side second guess if they want to take their first strike or not. So, this, according to the author, the deterrence can be if we do not want, for example, if we want China at any time during conflict, issues, problems, etc. If we want China to rethink its military approach or attack on India, therefore, we need to develop capabilities that match their military challenge, and these capabilities are enough to create a deterrence for China. They feel that India is prepared, so it is going to be mutually destructive for engaging in any kind of issue. And that is why the author says we need to prepare our defense industries. We have certain defense requirements. That means we will need arms, ammunitions, missiles, etc., drones. So we have defense requirements, and therefore these defense requirements can only be met. It can be met using various aspects. One, the government of India directly or government public sector enterprises, they directly engage in production. The second is we incentivize the private sector in India by giving them some incentives, for example, production related incentives. In fact, a lot of private sector organizations are being encouraged to participate and create defense products using certain challenges called the IDEX challenges, etc., where you display your product according to what the government need, and if they like your prototype, they can give you certain amount of incentive as well as support in terms of grants to develop that defense technology. So yes, private sector participation is also very important for innovation in defense products. And the third way to ensure that we fulfill our defense requirements is by imports. For example, the S-400 that we import from Russia, right? The author suggests that out of all these ways, the imports related option does create vulnerabilities. What vulnerabilities? Vulnerabilities such as supply chain disruptions, vulnerabilities such as the deterioration of relations or diplomatic relations between you and the country that you are sourcing from, vulnerabilities such as certain restrictions and sanctions on India or maybe the other country, and you can't import from them. We cannot ensure that India's national security is prone to these vulnerabilities and volatility. And therefore, defense production internally, or as we call it, Atmanirbharta, in defense production is very, very important according to the author. And therefore, the author says India needs to ensure defense industrial production. That means defense industries, those that are producing defense goods, they should be encouraged in India in order to produce the requirements that are required for this budding country. Now, therefore, the author says that any country that is trying to develop their defense technologies, products, etc., they have three choices. They have three approaches and three choices. So, three strategic approaches. What are the three strategic approaches? The first approach is called a bold approach. The second is called a conservative approach. And one is called the middle path approach. Let's understand what this means. According to the author, the bold approach means you start from scratch and you invest in technologies and innovation. You don't wait for a technology to come to you or source it from a different country. You innovate in terms of what you need. If you need a certain type of drones, tell your research organizations, etc., to innovate, to build, and to manufacture. So, innovate in terms of technology, create something new, or invest in technologies of the future. That is the case, yourself. The problem with this approach is that A, it is taking a long gestation time. Long gestation means these technologies might take a very long time to be built. There can be trial and error, etc., etc. Right? It will take a long gestation time, and there is also a chance. So, very, very likely, important likelihood of failure. So, the risks involved in this kind of approach are very high. That is the problem. The conservative approach is that whatever defense products that you already have, you just improve, make small improvements on that, and integrate new technologies as and when they come in the market. Right? So, the conservative approach is that whatever is the existing stock or the existing capabilities, just make very small gradual improvements on it. Right? So, whatever you already have, for example, drones, missiles, etc., you keep making small changes, variants. For example, the Akash missile can have certain variants, etc. So, gradual improvements, and at the same time, try to import technologies from other friendly partners and keep integrating this as and when. The middle path is a mix of both of this. Yes, The conservative approach is very important because immediately it will take less time, it will have lesser risks. You are not completely creating something new, and therefore the existing ammunition can be upgraded on real time basis. So the middle approach says continue to improve. Continue to improve what you already have, but at the same time start integrating newer technologies. Why? Because even if you continue to improve beyond a point, there is a chance they will become obsolete. Right? So therefore the author says these are the three approaches. We can probably take the middle approach and therefore reduce the risks associated with it. Yes. The author then suggests that we need various types of steps to ensure a robust strategy is put in place. What is to be ensured? First and foremost, the author says we require a large scale defense industrial base. That means the government of India can provide, or maybe in easier terms, certain industrial bases, certain areas where land can be acquired and defense production can increase. So government can enhance or help incentivize private sector to do so. The second important aspect is in order to innovate, the author says, the participation of the private sector is of crucial importance. So therefore increase these kind of challenges, for example, the IDEX challenges, for example, schemes such as the Aditi scheme, etc. This should continue to happen. Private sector participation is very, very important. What is also important according to the author is institutional, that means different institutions, they should take up coordination together. Institutional coordination. That means certain the armed forces, they should communicate very, very effectively about the requirements that are required on the field. Similarly, research organizations should ponder over how this requirement can be made into newer technologies. These newer technologies should be integrated or should be given or provided to manufacturing capabilities or facilities, and therefore the idea or the requirement to the final product should be a seamless project. They should work together in order to create deterrence. Another major important aspect that is mentioned by the editorial is that we must also, for example, Government of India, in case is making procurements domestically, internally, these procurements should be very, very in terms of long term. For example, if the Government of India says for the next 5 years we will be procuring this, the private sector gets an assurance, and therefore this drives the defense industrial production. So these Government of India procurements should be long term, they should be on proper analysis, they should be on proper bidding processes, they should be on proper prototype related processes, right? And they should be extremely transparent to ensure that whatever is source for India's national security needs is not faulty. There should also be a stable budget. For example, if the private sector knows that every year the Government of India is spending XYZ crores on procurements, the private sector will be boosted in that case. Right? So that becomes a case in point as well. Another important aspect that the author mentions is that we require various layers to ensure India's security. What do you mean various layers? There can be various layers in 2-3 aspects. One, if one command center fails, the other should be a backup. That can be the case. If one intelligence, search and intelligence, or surveillance center fails, there should be a backup. There can also be layers in the context of multi domain awareness. Multi domain means there can be warfare that is integrated. You might need drones, you might need torpedoes in the water, you might need certain floodlights, you might need missiles, interception missiles, etc. So, warfare now has become very multidimensional. It requires awareness and presence in all domains, whether air, whether land, whether sea, whether cyber security, right? So, multi domain warfare is very, very important. You need to ensure that whatever at all times is present to ensure India's deterrence capabilities, whether it is missiles, whether it is drones, whether it is land forces, whether it is the logistics, all should be effectively utilized at all times. We must also enhance these critical layers. For example, command and control centers, C2, these should be absolutely recognized. Their job should be recognized. Who gives the command, who controls, etc. The usage of these drones, etc. We also need to ensure proper intelligence is gathered. So that is why we need ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. That is very, very important for situational awareness. In fact, whatever intelligence you have, that is only going to give you a strategic advantage. We also require domain awareness. We also require cyber security related awareness. The cyberspace also needs to be secured at all times. That is what the editorial mentions. Let's just look at certain aspects that we have already read from this and also pick up some terms as well as examples associated with it. For example, read along with me. India must have two priorities. First, to know where we are vulnerable as compared to China, or when it comes to China, where we are vulnerable, right? And therefore, it is important to create command centers, proper communications, intelligence and surveillance related capabilities. So, first understand the vulnerabilities, and these cannot be understood without these. We need proper intelligence and surveillance platforms at all times. So, that is the case in point that has been mentioned, right? There are other layers. For instance, the integration. As I had mentioned, integrate various strike capabilities, close strike capabilities, far side strike capabilities, double strike capabilities, reciprocal side strike capabilities. So we must integrate at all times missiles, aircraft, drones, etc. as the strike layer to dislocate the enemy at depth. For example, if the incoming missiles are missed at this depth by the interception missiles, then at least something should be ready in order to intercept at a lower level. That should be the case. We also need proper logistics and proper infrastructure for easier logistics, for easier deployment in case a war is struck. We will have to deploy all our ammunitions, infantry, etc. from one region to another. And that deployment cannot happen if logistics are not good and infrastructure, the roads leading to those regions, are not good. India must also, according to the author, continue the nuke deterrence or the nuclear deterrence that it today possesses as nuclear capabilities. So that is the case as well when it comes to the suggestions that are to be made in the article. Let's come to the next one. Iran grants Hormuz passage to India and four others. As you would know, Strait of Hormuz was severely disrupted. And Strait of Hormuz is also considered a various or an important choke point. Why? Because here, huge number of traffic when it comes to shipping passes through these regions. The shipping is very, very important because these ships are the ones that are carrying LPG related help, that are carrying oil from West Asia to countries in Asia or maybe India. We had also seen how LPG supplies have been disrupted due to the tensions prevailing in West Asia. The cylinder shortage, etc., was in the news and absolutely something that we all are aware about. And therefore, in this context, Iran, who have also been blocking the Strait of Hormuz and also have significant strategic control in the context of location, have allowed the ships of certain countries to pass the Strait of Hormuz in order to ease tensions for these countries. And therefore, one of the countries that will benefit from this passage is India. Right? So, according to the four friendly, these are considered as four apparently friendly nations by Iran, the foreign minister said that we will allow for this waterway or the waterway connecting, please understand, this will be information and you should know this on the map as well. The Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, or the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. Right? So, therefore, these vessels, for example, Shivalik or tanker Apollo, unload cargo collected from Shivalik in Mangalore on Thursday as well. These small details are not important, but you can remember this even if you're writing an answer on IR when it comes to India Iran relations and how there was apparently a friendly treatment showcased to Indian ships vis-a-vis the other ships. Right? Let's come to the next article. India eyes local currency payments for West Asian oil. Now, just focus on this one word, and that is all that we need to do from this article. What is this one word? This one word says fiscal double hit of surging oil prices as well as depreciating rupee. What does this mean? Fiscal means something to do with money. That means the amount of expenditure that you will incur if you need to buy oil. The government of India will incur. So fiscal is the expenditure that you will incur, and fiscal double hit means the double hit when it comes to the expenditure on or the problem on your pocket. Why will India, how could India experience this double hit? Please understand, India could experience this double hit is because due to the West Asian conflicts between Iran, the strike in Gulf nations, the US Israel strikes on Iran, as well as the backlash and the conflicts that are continuing. Because of this, there is a tendency that oil shortage or oil delays when it comes to shipping has been the issue at hand. This oil shortage and oil shipping delays are significantly going to create a surge in oil prices. Why? Because of the simple idea, if demand stays the same and the supply is restricted, this is only set to increase or have an inflationary push on prices. So yes, oil inflation is a very, very obvious or can be a very obvious result of this tension related shortage and delays. So first things first, oil is getting costlier. In general, the price of oil is getting costlier. India being an economy that is import dependent, that means India imports maximum amount of its domestic needs from imports. That means we are importing oil from various countries. And therefore, whenever India is going to import this, and if the price of the commodity that we are importing, in this case oil, is increasing, India's import bill is definitely set to increase. We are still talking about the first part of the hit. The first part of the hit is going to be that because India is importing a certain commodity, that is oil, and that oil prices are increasing, therefore India's import bill is only set to increase. The first part. The second part is that because a lot of exports and imports in the world are done in a common currency, not the only currency, but often a common currency, that is the dollar, right? That means a country converts its own currency into a dollar, uses this dollar to import certain goods, etc. Right? Now, if we include, for example, if we convert Indian rupee into a dollar, we see that India's rupee vis-a-vis the dollar is depreciating. That means the value of the rupee is reducing. The value of the rupee is reducing. So therefore we see that if we convert it into a dollar, for example, if uh, 90 odd rupees or 94 odd rupees create $1, that 94 rupees is only allowing you to buy oil worth $1. You're spending so much of Indian currency. You're getting only $1 out of it. And you are buying oil using that dollar, which is already more expensive. So therefore, lesser is the value of rupee. The more depreciated the rupee, the more you will require the rupee to convert it into $1. And this will increase the total amount that you are spending when it comes to import. Right? So therefore, a tendency can be that India converts or uses, does not go through the dollar route, de-dollarization, because of the depreciating rupee. And depreciating rupee always makes imports a lot more expensive. But rather, India can have an understanding with these Gulf nations and say that we will pay for the West Asian oil that we are importing in local currency, or currency that you and I agree for. That can be the case, and that can reduce this hit of the depreciating rupee. So with local currency mechanism, India will see a drastic reduction in currency conversion. The currency conversion charges that we require, those can be offset. Each conversion costs about 1 to 2% of the total transaction value. And that is a high amount for us to pay. In fact, India also pays Russian oil in a combination of rupee, in a combination of dollar as well as local currencies. That is something that you must know about. Another quick article is about our Minister of External Affairs also meeting his other counterparts, for example, the French counterpart. They discuss the West Asian crisis at the G7 meet. So all that you need to know from the UPSC perspective are not these small updates. It is about G7 as a grouping. So G7 is an informal group. It is an informal intergovernmental group, and it has one of the most industrialized nations in the world, one of the most developed economies in the world. Which all countries make up G7? Let's look at that. So one, it is Canada. The other country is France, Germany, Italy, and UK from Europe, United States from North America. So two North American countries. The two North American countries are, of course, Canada and USA. There are certain European countries. The European countries are France, Germany, Italy, and UK, that is England. And please note, there is only one Asian country, that is Japan. It also has a organization, that is European Union, along with European Union. It was founded in the 1970s, 1975, an informal intergovernmental group of one of the most industrialized nations. It only has one Asian country. Please remember this. This can be very, very important. Right? EU is different. It is a member in a very different way. It is still considered in a different way. The idea is to coordinate economic and foreign policies. What should be the economic and foreign policies of democratic nations? That is the idea. It started in 1975. Was Russia a part of it? Yes, please note this is a detail as well. Russia as a country was a part of this grouping, and therefore this grouping could be seen as a G8. But because of Russian actions and the annexation of Crimea as a region, it was expelled or it was removed from the grouping and it became G7 again. The presidency is not static, it is not fixed. In fact, it rotates annually among member states, G7. So these are small facts that you must remember about G7. Is India a part of it? Absolutely not. Is any Asian country a part of it? Yes, Japan. Right? So this becomes an important information. Let's come to the next one. S-400 deliveries expedited as India enhances air defense. Again, S-400 missiles are something that is part of Indo-Russian deal. We import multiple S-400 missiles that have been very, very instrumental in intercepting certain strikes, even during the incidents of Operation Sindoor, right? So these are to be expedited, means fastened. We will be taking the delivery a lot quickly than we had intended to. What are these S-400? That is something that you must know for prelims, at least the type of missiles that are, utna you should know. So S-400 is a Russian developed. So first things first, it is Indo-Russian. That means India is procuring, but it is Russian in origin. It is created by Russia. So S-400 are Russian origin missiles. What kind of missiles are they? They are surface to air missiles. They can be launched from surface and targeted to any aerial targets. So first things first, Russian missiles. Second thing, surface to air missile systems. Again, understood the second capability. It is designed to track multiple targets. So it has multiple target setting capabilities. Hundreds of targets can be targeted and neutralized, whether it is drones, whether it is aircraft, whether it is missiles, etc. Right? And at ranges as close as 400 kilometers, and that is why the word S-400. So surface to air missiles, the ability to target multiple targets at once is the idea. Why is it called a layered defense system? Because the system can target various targets concurrently, that means simultaneously, using various missile types, right? One missile will try to neutralize it at 400 kilometers or intercept it. If this is lost, another missile will be launched and this will be able to neutralize at a shorter distance. If this is also missed, at an even shorter distance. So it has a layered defense system to ensure short capabilities as well, right? It has certain radars. Radars are basically to ensure or detect various interception. So whenever any kind of missile, etc., is coming in, these radars will be able to detect the incoming missiles, right? So that's all that you need to know when it comes to S-400. Last article. Home Ministry sends 290 takedown notices a day. Now let's understand what this is about. Read article section 79 along with me. So section 79, please focus, of the IT Act basically gives a certain safeguard or protection to social media intermediaries. For example, Facebook, Instagram, etc. It gives safeguards and says, you will not be responsible for any abusive, any objectionable content that is posted on your website. You will not be accountable, or you will not be responsible, right? Okay. Why? Because maybe any end user has posted that content and it is not the social media intermediaries' responsibility or their fault. But then, Section 79, Section 79, Subclause 3 of the IT Act says that this protection of not holding you responsible is only given to you as long as, please focus on this, as long as if we find certain objectionable content, if we find certain abusive content, that means the government of India, if the government of India flags it, informs you that this is objectionable, this needs to be taken down. Take down notice. Did you understand now? If the government of India has told you, has informed you as a social media intermediary that this XYZ information is abusive, it is objectionable, and we are telling you to take it down. If you act on this, that means if you do take it down, then you are not accountable. But if you do not act on this information or request or notice, then you could be held liable. So that is the power and the structure that is present. So therefore, read this along with me. Section 79 shields online platforms from legal liability for content posted by users. But Section 79 subclause 3 says that shield will not apply if they fail to take down the content despite being flagged by government authorities. If the government authorities flag it, it is your obligation to remove it. And therefore, the data suggests that Home Ministry sends, or the dedicated center called the Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center I4C, sends, is designated as the ministry's agency, Home Ministry's agency, and they send almost as high as 290 takedown notices in a day. That is the rampant increase in objectionable content that is being posted. You can only imagine how much is being posted. So social media platforms are required to remove unlawful content within 3 hours of receiving an order. And the ministry report, Home Ministry report, shows that there is a sharp increase in these incidents, objectionable content, etc. Number of security incidents, as mentioned also in this data, you can understand. In 2025, look at this data, as high as 29 lakh and as high as 290 takedown messages on an average every single day, right? So they need to act in this 3-hour deadline in order to continue to get the safeguard benefits. That's all that you need to know. You can quote this in rising cases of cybersecurity issues or unlawful content on the internet in GS paper 3 internal security as well. You can quote this data. You can quote section 79 subclause 3 of the IT Act. That's all that we have for today's the Delhi edition. In case you're taking back something informative, make sure that you like the video. Comment down below, and if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel now is the time to do so. On that note, allow me to sign off. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.